Yeah, welcome to HOYtalk, a talk show on YouTube and major podcast platforms. We speak up on Filipino topics that are less commonly talked about, and maybe even taboo, while also amplifying Filipino voices in the community. I'm your host, April, and I would like to acknowledge that this episode is being recorded on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional lands of First Nations and Métis people. So today, we're taking a dive into one of everyone's favorite topics, food. More specifically, we're talking about Filipino food and a chef's interesting relationship with it. Speaking of which, my dream was actually to become a chef. And so I'm super excited. When I was little, food and cooking was one of the main activities that brought my family together. And I wanted to share that with the world, but my dream was quickly discouraged. I was met with laughter and some ridicule on my career choice, and needless to say, I am not a chef. I wonder if our guest today has experienced something similar. I guess we'll find out. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome him to the show. So Chef Earl, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm good. It's a day off, so it's always good.
Yeah, so on your days off where you're still technically, talking about food. So here we are. But I just wanted to expand more on Chef. So Chef Earl Briones has been hustling from food trucks to fine dining for nearly 2 decades, winning various awards and recognition. And through history and balancing tradition and art, he aims to create memorable experiences for whoever comes to his table. Chef Earl is active in the community, as he had an appearance on Food Network's Fire Master Season 2, featured in an online exhibit, The Filipino and Me, Insights into Living Heritage Gallery by the Philippine Arts Council, and assisting youth with cooking-related interests with Make-A-Wish Canada, and recently had a collab with Filistix, which is how we actually met. And despite all this, here's a fun fact: he was a former anthropology student. So, could you talk more about the projects you've been involved with, like with Filistix and the Philippine Arts Council?
Yeah. Honestly, it's been a great honor to be even with the Philippine Arts Council. They do really good work. So, anyway, we did the dinner that we met, which was called Rice and Mysticism. So with that was a service to not only the food but the history of our cuisine that probably isn't told. With the Arts Council, I've worked with them, like you said, with a project called Filipino in Me, Insights into Insights into Heritage. That was really cool to me because the invitation as a chef is not usually there, but it allowed me to showcase food as art. And in our case, in our cuisine, that's might not be the most important thing, but you see it in the how food is presented and how food looks like in colors and everything. So those 2 projects have been kind of spurning not only my want to do Filipino-based cuisine, but also just try to figure out more about who we were before, colonizers came in.
Right. And so, is there anything besides like what we said in the intro that you'd like to add about yourself?
No, that's a pretty expensive intro. No, I would say that I guess the only thing I would add is that I have a lot more things coming in the horizon as well, and that a lot of what I do as a chef is actually a benefit or a after the matter of fact from my interest in anthropology and history. So I guess the only thing to add is I've always been a nerd of some sort in some way. Yeah, I think those are the only 2 things that I need to say about me, because like when you talk to me in front, it'll be very apparent.
Yeah, so I guess that leads into the next question. Like, you did say that, you were in anthropology initially. So what had you shift to a culinary career?
Um, I mean, money. I feel like it's a story that
Mhm.
a lot of Filipino immigrants have, but I mean, when you don't have generational wealth, it's really hard to, go further than what you want to do. And I had a really cool prof on my kind of second-ish year where I was like, can you please tell me like what the reality of the situation of this career is? And he pretty much told me like, yeah, like this is the situation, like essentially I would need to go into academics longer and then go longer debt, and like I just could not afford to take on that debt. Initially it's because I already worked in kitchens to begin with. I was a short order cook as I was paid for university.
Oh.
And so one of my minors was supposed to be archaeology because I really love history. I really love uncovering past and trying to figure out as humans who we are now and a society where we are now, like how did we get here? Where did everything from has always been the
Mhm.
biggest motivator for my kind of thinking. So honestly, I it's an interesting shift because when you go from anthropology to cooking, I know it's very different things, but uh, a lot of cooking, if you're looking further than like the surface area, you'll find those connections to history. You'll find that every single food piece has a story to tell. So
Yeah, there's actually a lot of like things that do connect the two, but it goes deeper than like just cooking or being a chef.
yeah,
So like could you expand on that?
yeah. Our food, I should preface, our food and our culture is steeped in a lot of traditions. We're a culture that existed way before the Spanish actually even wrote about us and actually labeled it the Philippines. The very first things they actually did write about us were food. And so, as my research was kind of going on this, it was very evident that when they landed in the Philippines, they needed provisions to keep sailing. And so, yeah, one of the very first things they listed down was our food, what we had, what our provisions were, how abundant it was, and like everything like that. And so, honestly, it feels like right now, as of this moment, like I'm doing my papers again at university all over again, trying to research like the classics and like trying to research like the fall of the Greeks and trying to research like um like Egyptian history. These are only histories that I was enamored by and the ones that I followed because I thought it was so cool to have like a history that's steeped in like the past and like mysticism and mystery.
Mhm.
And then you realize very quickly that, you know, we are living in a culture like that. We are living in a culture that we only know really history from the 1500s on because that's when Magellan and Pigafetta started writing about us. And so
Mhm.
that's kind of where it ties into anthropology, is where I'm able to still study history. I'm able to still kind of understand how we got here, but I'm actually just for once focusing on my culture and like how did our culture get to this point. You know, these are things that aren't taught in university, so to speak, because it's not known, and that a lot of these publications might be taught in like Filipino university, but in the scope of North America, like not a lot of people really know the history of the Philippines beyond the face value and like maybe like the more modern takes on it. Um, so yeah, I think to me it's cool that these two careers have kind of finally coalesced together. I wouldn't say it's an easy transition, but it's been a very not beneficial, but like it's been a very uh good one, so to speak.
Right. And like with your, different cuisines and histories and putting those two together, like what got you into like the fire masters? Was that something that you were just like, how did that come about? I'm like so interested because I'm a Food Network junkie.
That came about because um I mean, who doesn't have illusions of grandeur, right? So uh it came about because I'm a very competitive chef to begin with in person, I guess. um I love competing. I love being able to put yourself out there and like win or lose, regardless of what happens, you end up finding something new about yourself, whether or not it's something new that you need it to be reaffirmed, or something new that like, oh, I have a new skill or a new goal to like aim for now. Like that's what it gives me anyways when I compete. Fire Masters was because everybody's been doing TV in Edmonton that I know that's a chef, and I'm like, oh, let's just try it out. And
Yeah.
so like I just blindly applied. I'd been applying to like Top Chef as well. So like um but I blindly applied, and then they sent me like, oh, like okay, here's the first steps, and then you go through several steps of like, well, they kind of have to figure you out so you're not like a controversial figure just in case you do go on TV.
Right.
And like, yeah, and then essentially it went through the process, got interviewed, and then finally got to realize that I have one of the harder like groups for like the competition, and I was like, well, that's cool. Um, yeah, it honestly like obviously like as probably if you've seen it, I got eliminated first, but to be fair, like two of the other competitors were like at the top of their game, and like I was nowhere near there at the time. So like, you know, you compete against someone who's working at 2-star Michelin restaurant and someone who like grows their own freaking honey. Like
Oh my
those two,
God.
yeah, they were just very talented and like really nice people. Like, but even in that loss, like I think I learned way more from that than I did when winning, to be honest. Because like I got to see what a Michelin star chef looks like and like competes like in real life. I got to meet, I honestly like that guy who grows his own honey is a very nice man. So like I met a new chef friend, and like, yeah, Chef Fire Masters is a mix of, I actually haven't watched the episode fully myself yet.
Yeah.
It's always awkward, at least for me, to watch yourself like doing things. And
Yes.
like and so like I haven't really watched the episode in its entirety, but it was a good experience, honestly. Like it shatters a little bit of your perception of cooking, um, food and TV, because you get to see behind the scenes, and then you just can't watch any other cooking competition other than like after that.
Wow, that's so interesting. But I think being put with chefs of that caliber also speaks volumes about like where you're going and things that you're doing.
I hope so. And no one was just trolling me, but to be honest, like they were really tough competitors. Like I was struggling making potato salad for the first time in my life, and the 2-star Michelin chef, I don't remember her name, but she managed to fold and like beautifully prepare like a from the scratch chapati bread, and like it's a bread that you need to let rise and then laminate and then fold and then laminate, and then she did this while doing her main, and we're all just like, what?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and so like I turned over and like she's got this bread and this nice dish, and I was like, I made potato salad instead. Yo.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I've always wondered. So that's a really interesting insight. Moving on to our next kind of topic. I know we've spoken like personally about your goals to inspire the youth and use your skills to bring our community together. So like what steps are you taking to do that and reach that goal, and have you had to face any obstacles?
I'll start with the last one because I feel like that's the easier one to answer.
Mhm.
There's like always going to be obstacles, whether or not it's within the community or it's personal. I feel like whenever you try to do something more than you, like you probably should run into a couple of philosophical questions about what you're doing. To me, it's like, is what I'm doing actually accurate? Like, for me, like I'm doing a lot of cultural based history dinners. So like I have to make absolutely sure that what I'm saying is accurate and not just like a like an old tale or like a folklore, right? Like so there's one where you're worried about kind of like offending the people back home. And then I think any creator in the diaspora can probably attest to that, like that point where
Yeah.
you're not quite sure what you're doing is Filipino enough. And then authenticity, right? And so like those three are your usual ones. I've been lucky enough within the Edmonton community to have almost faced no like
crab mentality. The people that I work with regularly, like that was the one thing that we all agreed on when we all started working, was that this is for like a bigger thing than like us and raising our profiles. Like obviously we're gonna have to raise our profiles just to make some noise, but what our goals were always is to put a highlight on Filipino food and Filipino culture, because all of us within the Bayanihan group, like me, the Filistix guys, Ariel Royal, and like Yellow, JP, and like anybody else that joined us at the time, um, we all wanted a focus on like Filipino food, not be the only focus, but at least be within the conversation and scope. Um, as for what I'm doing, I mean, truly, like the other struggle is like you never feel like you're doing enough. Over
Yeah.
200,000 of us here, so it's really hard to service 200,000 people. But what I can do, and then I think to me, what I at least can open is a little bit of doors that are open to me. And so, you know, for people that are interested in culinary, or for people that are already in culinary and are a little bit younger or a little bit still not quite at the same level, I don't really consider those things, but I need to put words into things.
Yeah.
And so, like, you know, if you're just starting out, you know, like I do the dinners and I open it to chefs, obviously paid as well, because I don't like to hire free labor, to like come in, like learn a couple things, feel what it feels like to do a pop up. Like, you know, I try to, whenever it's not just Filipino, but whenever I try to like be in kitchens, I try to teach as much as I can. Like, I think that the best thing I can provide for the community is a little bit of volume, a little bit of space, and like a little bit of knowledge that I have that I can pass by. And like, I have never been one to be afraid to teach what I know. I'll also be the first one to say that like I'm still learning pretty much every day. So um for the community, like I just try to be as there as I can and try to be as useful as I can to the bigger organizations that are trying already existing. So like organizations like the Filipino arts community, like hopefully with Sarah and I at some point, you know, like with the Pop 23 as well, like just trying to be there in as much Filipino events as I can to, you know, help with what I can with what reach I do have to like help amplify the volume. And like I said before in our dinner, like I told this to you as well, where it's like I'm of the belief that like the only way we really achieve that focus and that importance in our culture is if we all have a volume, and we achieve that by uplifting each other and like actually, you know, teaching our knowledge to the next person that's actually interested to learn and continuing evolving that, because realistically that's also our culture back home, is that we continuously evolve even our home-based culture. So yeah, that's as far as I've been doing for the community. I hope to do more. I hope to do more for like Filipinos, and anybody in like the LGBT community. And that's kind of my aim as well right now at this point.
That's so awesome. And I'm curious because of like, I mean, with what I said in the beginning, like when I said I wanted to be a chef, like I really did. I came into like a lot of like, oh, why, you know, and like a lot of obstacles. And I guess like when you first started or said you wanted to go into the culinary field, were you met with like those kinds of obstacles, like people telling you a why and questioning your move, or was it like really supportive?
I will say, like, I got lucky because my sisters did support it. Maybe not fully outright, but like my sisters are the ones that kind of raised me from when I was a teen until like when I was able to kind of make decisions.
Yeah.
So like they kind of understood where my brain was going. Neither of them really kind of expected me to finish university because they knew that I wouldn't like the reading and the essay part of it. And so to them, they were expecting me to veer off in a different direction. I will say that to this day, my parents do still try to give me college courses. So I don't think it ever just abates. But maybe I'm also a little bit different in that in my opinion, it is my life. And so like as much as I'd like to obviously make my parents happy and fulfilled, and like I think a lot of first generations can attest, I'm pretty sure you can as well, to the fact that, you know, you're pressured to do a job that is guaranteed to make a stable amount of money. And maybe not a lot, but enough that in your parents' perspective, that it's enough for you to survive and then pass on and then maybe take care of them. It depends where your parents
Mhm.
are at. But um to me it's like I could do this job that I love, and you know, I have always been in culinary, not just to cook, but also like for every other aspect of it, like how food has been an important part of every other culture. How food has been one of the motivators of like launching ships to go find the new world across three continents. Like to me, food has always been fascinating in that it's been the one common thing in human history that's existed and like been persistent. Uh so when it came to career choice, like yeah, there's like discouragement from my mom and like my dad. Actually, even to this day, it still kind of happens once in a while. Um, and then you know your elder members don't really understand what's going on, so they just either do the "oh you're gonna regret it later" or the "oh bahala ka na," like attitude.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so like you know, at the same time, it was hard to kind of go through that. And again, I was lucky to have sisters that supported it, but yeah, eventually I hit a point where like, you know, like I'm realizing that this is my life, this is my path, and like I could fulfill like very easily go back to university and like fulfill what they want for me from like school and whatnot, but like be very like miserable and like is it worth sacrificing my not just like at that moment joy, but like is it worth sacrificing and changing your future just to like accomplish what my parents want? And again, like I have to recognize that I also haven't lived with my parents since I was 12. So like I've been a little bit away from that like pressure a little bit. Obviously, it's different when you're facing it face on and you're living with them versus like a message or a call that you can ignore and just be like, I'll put that to the side. I'll just ignore that. But at this point, chefing has also become its own like little prestige, so to
Yes.
speak. Especially for I think the diaspora who have seen like Netflix and YouTube and all that stuff. There's a different connotation of what you could be as a chef, and so like I think there's an argument to be made now.
Right. Yeah, that's really refreshing though. Like I think that's why it was also important to me to get your content out there as well, because like if there's youth watching, the fact that you are, kind of blazing through, and like you said, it's your life. It's you love doing it, and I think a lot of people need to hear that. And to me that like resonates so much with me, with all the Filipino like pressures, and I guess, they always tell you, oh, I struggled so much in the Philippines. I brought you here. And now what are you doing?
So like, again, like I can't even imagine that kind of situation because like to me, like I had the privilege of kind of being free from like the face to face every day.
Mhm.
Um, like I said, like I can't even imagine what it's like if you're trying to do this career and like you know you just come from the Philippines and you're actually living with those family members because it's a lot. Because it's now you're like the other thing that people need to realize is that cooking is always going to be a mental battle. Like whether or not you're doing a pop up or you're line cooking, like you're always going to be fighting against your own brain.
Mhm.
Um, and so it's rough to take that in two fronts when like work and then going to work, right? And then going to home and then taking that. It's rough. It's hard. I can only assume it's harder when you see it face to face every day, like I said. But at the end of the day, like to me, I realized that our parents did come here from the Philippines to make our lives better. But isn't making our lives better giving us that choice of being who we want to be and how we want to accomplish our lives? Because like to me, like again, like my parents sometimes still don't like it. Uh, but I invite them to my dinners because uh it's like a showing of like, hey, like this is what I'm doing. This is actually what I'm doing, and this is why I've been keeping on this career. And B, it's also making them understand a different culture that they're not in the Philippines. That they're understanding, like, like I want to show them that, like, we're changing our story, right? And I think for a lot of immigrant families, I think that's the point, right? Like, we want to change our stories. We want a better life than what we probably would have had in the Philippines from what our parents' perspective was. And, like, in my opinion, having that freedom to choose your career and having that freedom to choose who you want to be and what you want to accomplish is part of that, like, betterment of the next generation. If we as, like, those generations aren't going to support each other and, like, like, then it's also doing a service to our parents, because then, like, again, in my opinion, like, that freedom, that privilege to actually form your career and your life to something that you want at the end is not always something that's available back home. And so, like, yeah, I honor that, and, like, I don't really hold them wanting me to go back to college at 33 and, like, an offense, because I understand where they're coming from, but I'm sort of showing them how, like, I'm succeeding without that, like, diploma, essentially.
Right. Yeah, and that totally makes sense. And for me too, like, I should preface that like when I was younger, being a chef was something completely different. And you're right, like, being a chef has a different connotation now. But I'm curious though, like, when you invited your parents, how did they react?
So, like, my dad lives in Vancouver, so, like, I invite him, but he can't really get here. But my mom came. My mom's come to a couple of my dinners, actually. I mean, there's always gonna be that, like, traditional sense where they're gonna be like, it doesn't taste quite right, which is fair. And honestly, like, as laughable as that is, like, it means actually something. It means that you're
Yeah.
still not quite hitting the right combinations, right? So, like, truly, like, before, it was like a nervous wreck, because I was like, I don't know how my mom's gonna react to some of my food, because, like, some of it goes from, like, oh, that looks okay, to, like, that doesn't look like what you're actually telling us. And so, like, it's always a gamble, because, like, will she understand? Will she even like it? But no, she's supportive when she eats. Like, she'll actually eat everything. She might send me, like, college brochures, but she kind of understands my career a little bit more, I do take her criticisms with, like, a grain of salt, but also, like, I definitely, like, take it seriously. So, like, when she tells me, like, this isn't quite right, well, like, who would know this recipe better than the little lady who did it before I did? So, like, um, she criticizes some things, and I take it, and then it's either, like, gonna make it better or not. And then, so far though, like, it's actually been helping us kind of connect, because, like, again, like, I didn't live with her since I was 12. um we've been using the dinners as a way of connecting, like, our history, like, not just, like, Filipino history, but, like, our own personal familiar history. Yeah, it's been good, because we've been using it to connect again to each other, like, a little bit better. And then, yeah, I think she enjoys it. I'm pretty sure she would tell me if she doesn't. I hope.
Yeah. And so did you mentioned your sister and how she
Yeah,
really supported you and
sisters, if they
kind of
watch this.
raised you? Pardon?
Sorry, sisters, if they watch this, then you'll see
Oh,
sisters.
sisters.
Yeah,
I
they're gonna be what?
plural sisters,
Save a life. Save a life.
right? But do you have any culinary influences that you like credit to the way you are in your, I guess, in your journey?
I don't oddly enough, I'm probably one of the more competent cooks in my family. So, uh, like, my mom can cook. My sisters are, like, iffy. It's
Oh.
okay, inspiration wise, honestly, I take inspiration from just the environments around me. I really like street food, because not because it's this cool thing on YouTube, but because I think, to me, street food is one of the most honest foods you can probably eat from a country that you're not familiar with. I was raised on street foods also, like, so there's that. But to me, like, there's nothing more honest, there's nothing more, like, direct, and there's nothing more, like, this is what people eat every day. Like, the fancy stuff I make, and even, like, some of the buffet stuff is great, but, like, that's not always a Filipino eats, right? Because like I think what's more accessible is a fishbowl. Is a quick
That's my favorite, by the way. I just have to input that fishball. Like when we go to the Philippines, I will take a whole cart and buy them out.
yeah, and that's what I mean, right? Like there's something to be said with the old recipes that I'm doing, and like adobo will always obviously be there. But the reality is like most common than not, like because we have merienda as like a afternoon snack. More often than not, what people will eat is tusok or like anything with like in the culinary that's fast because they're working, right? So that's why I love street food. That's why I take inspiration from like those flavors because like don't get me wrong, I love going to fancy restaurants, but like to me, there's always a muteness to like the flavor is always like an edge they don't take. Whereas street food, it's like this is the food, eat it, and so like yeah, and so like it's very unabashed, it's very unhidden, it's very much like this is balut, deal with it, and so like like that's one of my inspirations because like I think I think the way the food is handled and presented and the way it's accessible, I think should be celebrated. I think food needs to be accessible to everybody. Personal wise, I don't really know. I guess like my mom did teach me how to cooking like earlier on, but that was more as like a survival because she was a single mom working. So like, I had to cook. So but like career wise, like honestly so many like Yotam Ottolenghi has been one of my favorites since I started learning how to cook. He's a chef in New York. He does articles for the New York Times and the Guardian. But what he does is he speaks to the passion of like his Jerusalem like background, and so he talks about old like Hebrew cooking and old like Middle Eastern cuisine and the spices and the trade route and all of those like history that, in my opinion, it does add to what you're eating because I think the disconnect in our society right now. I know it's weird to hear that, but not a lot of people know where food comes from anymore. Like not in a sense of like, oh, it's an Atlantic or Pacific salmon, but like, where did that dish you're eating come from? And I feel that like people will respect what they're eating more, and the people if they can understand the history behind it. And so that's why I've been doing what I'm doing with the inspiration because I saw Otto Lange do it in like not personally, like in a video. I can't afford to go to New York yet, but in a video he was talking in a cloister about like like old traditions and old like history of Middle Eastern cooking. And to me, I'm like like I feel like that's why a lot of the other cuisines are going forward because there's a deeper understanding of like what you're doing and where we're coming from rather than just like we made ube, eat it. Like but we're all also living in a place where we're the minority, right? So if we explain our history and if we actually each all understand our history, I think that will actually move a lot of our culture forward as well and our food. But that's one of my that's essentially where I'm drawing inspiration from. It's just history and food and just trying to remember like the Philippines as I was as a kid essentially.
Yeah, I was really, really interested in how you came about with the dishes we had tried at your pop-up. And it
Oh
was super interesting, like even when you said that they didn't use, was it soy sauce
yeah, for adobo.
in adobo? That was like, to me, because adobo is such a staple and soy sauce always went hand in hand with it, I was just like mind blown about that. So
Honestly, like it shouldn't be that controversial of a take, but even when I was kind of like doing that, I was like, do I do soy sauce? And I'm like, you know what, let's just not. So I
right?
actually found out there might be an original name to adobo actually. So I actually found it
Oh.
out 4 weeks ago. And
Mhm.
it might be like there's no way to confirm it because some people erase their history, but it might actually be pinalam is one of the
Oh,
first words for it.
interesting. And what does that translate to?
Made sour essentially
Interesting.
or
Yeah.
marinated, and so like yeah, so that's what I mean, right? Those little tidbits of history. I mean, I'd be the first one to say that I didn't know about it either before until I started doing this, right? But like I said in the dinner, like it's a story worth mentioning because it's part of our story.
That is awesome. I love that because traditionally, you know, you go to, I guess, like your aunt's house and they just like
Yeah.
throw some food on the table and you just know that that's going to be there at your next party. But it's so interesting to know the history and where everything came from and why they did it the way they did. And so to you, like, what do you think has been, and you mentioned this in your dinner as well, that I think you said there's a big five, like Asian cuisine. And then, like, has it been challenging or have you had any big obstacles in getting Filipino cuisine better exposure in Canada? Or like even in Edmonton?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's weird, right? We're one of the bigger groups in Canada as for like immigrants, one of the most seen groups in retail and food industry. And yet somehow there is a definite struggle in getting like Filipino food in the forefront. I think it's because people aren't familiar with it past like adobo and ube and like halo halo. And what we've presented, to be fair, has also been like the nice things, right? So like I think there's always going to be a challenge trying to get Filipino food. And like, I don't have any delusions that, you know, in what I'm doing is going to be the one that pushes it forward fully. But I think it's going to help. But like you said, like we talked about the big five, which is like the big five, like Asian groups, that are known culturally, like, and that have a sphere of influence. And so it's like Korean, I don't remember all of them actually. Chinese, Korean, Japanese, and then Vietnamese, and at this point, like Indian, really. And so, what, in my opinion, what is very common along those five, and even maybe some that I have missed, is that there's already an understanding of history in all those cultures, and that's how you're able to absorb their pop culture so fast, is because you understand the context by which any of the motions and any of the food and any of the explanations are happening. We understand Korean culture and sorry, not understand, I shouldn't say that. We have a knowledge of Korean culture and is very easily accessible enough to be able to be like, oh, that's what a kimchi is, right? We have chefs like David Chang who have made his career to make kimchi like into the mainstream and gochujang. Chinese cooking has had its stars in Su Lee and like Jimmy, I think his last name is Jimmy Wang. We've also seen like Chinese chefs on TV since I can remember, like Iron Chef, like Japan, I understand, but the Chinese and Japanese chefs always battled each other. Same thing for Japan. We know about the three warring feudal eras. We know about sushi in the history of it. We know about sashimi. We can say what a tamago translates to, but if I ask people what does some Filipino words translate to, I'll get a blank stare, and that's because, in my opinion, we're just a little too humble for our own good.
Yes. Oh, yes. I was hoping you would touch on that.
I think honestly, it's also part of the culture, right? We're taught to absorb, we're taught to adapt, we're taught to survive. And part of that survival, unfortunately, is adapting to your nature. And like when you're transplanted, in my opinion, anyways, is that you tend to not maybe reject, but ignore your previous like culture. And so like, yeah, I think to me that's part of the difficulty of pushing Filipino food in the forefront in Canada is that the newer generations that were born here are a little bit disconnected, and then the ones that have immigrated have been taught to adapt. And so right now they're adapting, right? They're trying to absorb Canadian culture, so they're not focused on Filipino, which is fair. Like I get it. It's always going to be a struggle. I feel like though that it's a struggle for any culture that's not in the mainstream to try to get out and try to get your voice heard. But honestly, there's a lot of creators, a lot more since I've even started kind of looking at them. We might not be getting like the mainstream like volume, but at the same time, it's only a matter of time because people are doing some really cool stuff and very, very different stuff that's not just food. You know, some people are some people are like motivators, some people are creators of art and like its forms. Like I cook, some other people cook, like some other people can sing. I can't sing. It's Chelsea.
You can't?
Nick
No,
cannot.
you're Filipino. You can sing. Just
I
kidding.
know, but I've yelled so much in my like career that my voice box is damaged, I think. But you know what I mean? Like it's always gonna be a struggle. There's always gonna be those blocks that you face when you're trying to do something. I think that's just natural. I think it's weirder if you don't face those challenges.
Mhm.
But by and far, to be fair as well to the community as a whole, there's also been a ton of support. So for every, I think in my opinion, for every challenge that I face, there's always been a group or two or a family that's always been like, oh, you can do this, let's do this. The struggle is always going to be there. I think we all realize that. But honestly, you can only keep smashing against it until it gives way.
I like that. I like that. So now comes some fun questions for you. Or maybe, I don't know if you get asked this all the time, but like, do you have a favorite Filipino dish that you like to prepare or a signature dish that you do?
So I don't have a signature dish because my brain works on like ADHD time. And so it's like, once I figure out a dish, I'm like, cool, that was good. Moving on. And so like very rarely do I revisit dishes. Actually, just in January was one of the first few times that I revisited a couple of dishes to do again. But I love kare kare. um, there's just something about that peanut stew that every time I see it, I'm like, yeah, I'm down. Like kare kare has just that like textures. It's great textures between like the crunchy vegetables, the very soft like meat, and like the eggplant, and then that salty from the peanut butter, but also that sweetness from the peanut butter, and then you get the meatiness from the beef, and then it's just like it just works. It makes sense. I don't know how in the world we managed to get to the peanut curry part of our cuisine because it's the only one, but
Right.
I'm grateful we got there.
Yeah. That is interesting. You know, I was watching something on the Food Network where I think I was in Toronto. Don't quote me on this, but they made kare kare to like a noodle dish.
Yeah, I can see that. Again, I haven't gone to the point where kare kare has become something that I actually needed to recreate yet, just because I'm working through history. But I'm so
Yeah.
excited, just
Yeah.
because like where like I get that it's like from most likely India and or like
Mhm.
maybe like some parts of Africa,
Mhm.
but like it's so unique because like there's no other peanut butter application anywhere other than
Yeah.
just peanut butter. There's just something about that stew
Yeah.
that's just warming.
Yeah. It's like soul. It's like, yeah, soul food to me, anyhow.
Yeah.
What about like aspiring chefs? I know you do stuff with Make a Wish. Do you have any, like, I guess, advice or what you think is the most important quality for a chef to possess, like for our young aspiring chefs?
So I'll answer the quality part first. Quality part. I mean, I've also been a joker my entire career, so take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, obviously. But um, I think one of the best things that I look for when I look for chefs, but also like, in my opinion, what made me like able to go higher than most people is the fact that I'm adaptable. Um, the kitchen is a fast-paced environment with uber amounts of pressure with the shortest amount of time and one of the most demanding customer bases you could possibly ever serve. And so like it's a high pressure situation. And so having a skill to adapt to stress and also to adapt to the situation to get a solution is a definite like asset because when you're quick on your feet and when you're quick on your mind, it's hard to stump you. And so you're always going to be the first person to have the solution. It also prevents you from like spiraling out and like stressing out. So that's one of the more important ones I'd say. And then the other one is honestly just being hungry, like hungry for positions, to hungry to move up, and then hungry to learn. I think hungry to learn is one of the most important things that you could also have. You can go to school for cooking for sure, but when you reach a certain level in culinary, it's very much a self-motivated like career, depending on like what you're willing to learn about the industry and how much you're willing to learn about food in general. Um, Other than that, for young chefs, unfortunately, you're gonna crash into difficulties. Unfortunately, some kitchens still do exist that don't take Filipinos seriously past like dishwasher or prep cook, but like they're not the only kitchen out there, and like realize the opportunities you might get, but also realize when it's time to leave that spot to so that you can ensure your growth. Um, Other than that, the industry has changed from when I started, so like it's a lot more welcoming now. To be fair, there's a lot more importance placed in treating people like human beings. It's a little bit better. It is still has its work to be done, but it's getting better. It's slowly improving, too slowly, but um, yeah, like have fun with it. Have to battle. Half the point of getting and half the fun of this career is the people and the friends that you'll inevitably meet along the way. I know that sounds cheesy, but there's also a career that'll suck up your time and like your energy. And so the people you work with on the line become your family. And so like before I can say this to myself, I worked in a place where I had those like people where I had them like family and I didn't realize it until essentially when I left that spot and I was like, wow, I really miss those guys. And like, yeah, that's part of the journey is to enjoy and to like see other people. Cooking isn't just like a stiff thing. Your personal experiences, your personal life, your personal tastes always will mix into what you're doing, especially if you're doing something that is yours and that is from you. That joy, that sadness, unfortunately, still does get folded in your food. So yeah, like part of being a chef is experiencing life. So and tasting like what the world can offer you. So don't be afraid to taste what is weird. Be adaptable and just have fun online as much as you can. But also know when it's time, like I said, when it's time to leave a place because it's toxic for your growth.
That is really interesting. I also wanted to touch on because our next episode will be with someone in the LGBTQ community, and you mentioned about doing more work with them.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I never want to call myself an ally because to me that's not up to me to decide. And I support the community. I embrace them in open arms because, like, to me, I value people based on their values and not their orientation. It doesn't really matter to me who you love. Love is love. And so, I don't call myself an ally because I think to me that's up to them to decide if I am being an ally. Just like I said, like I want to help the community in any way I can, but me being a cis male at this point, I think it's pretty obvious. I don't think it's up to me to decide what it is they need, and so to me, I'm just trying to be open to the community to what they need from me because I think that's how I can help. I work with the PETA Arts when I can and when they want me. I open myself to like the organizer there to like if you have any questions, if you need any food, please let me know. Because I don't think it's up to me to hijack an event and be like, this is an LGBTQ support event. Because like I am not from that community. So it's like to me is if they want to throw an event, I would like them to be at the forefront of that event, the community as a whole, and then me as a support. Because like that's the point, right? Like I think to me, if you want to support a community, that community itself needs to be at the forefront of what's going on and not you as the person. And so like yeah. So when I say like I want to help the community more, it's more of like, I'm open to helping them how I can. But I will wait kind of for their lead to tell me how I can help them.
Mm-hmm. So what is this organization? Sorry, what is it called?
APIDA Arts, APIDA.arts.
Oh.
It's like, again, like Asian Pacific Islander and Desi Indian. So like Southeast Asian, and like Desi Indian. So like, yeah, they're an alliance of obviously LGBTQ plus community, but also like there are performers, they're burlesque dancers, they're singers, they're poets, they're like multiple disciplinaries. And I've been to one of their events, and I gotta say, they're a lovely group of people. Accept everybody with open arms, and so yeah, I just hope everybody accepts them with open arms too, because like yeah, they're good people, and like that's why I said like I want to help, because I just think it's right. It's like I don't know, and so but yeah, whatever I can and however I can, I'd love to help.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And because I mean, mental health has been at the forefront of so many topics. You, as someone who's so busy and trying to help the community, and like you said, like your mind kind of goes in different places, and sometimes you feel like, oh, yeah, I did that. And then I'll just move on to the next thing. And you seem so busy and so involved. And how do you like de-stress or handle yourself in a way where yeah, you don't burn yourself out or walk away and just be like, you know what, I can't.
I think I'm just always permanently burnt out at this point in my career. No.
Yeah.
I think honestly, again, I've been lucky in that because I've worked in this industry so long and I've been involved in management for so long, that I've got a greater capacity for stress and just like general things now. Not a lot of things bother me anymore, because like unless it's something catastrophic like the oven turning on fire, like it doesn't really faze me that much. Again, I've been lucky because that's just my experience. Mental health wise though, like it's a lot. Like what people don't see that goes in this dinners is about like 1 to 2 months of like reading and combing through history books. And while that sounds mundane, it's like it's really hard to study history, because as someone who's like wanting to find that connection, when you read about history, it's always with a grain of salt, because like I said, our history isn't always written by us. So it's like, so it definitely messes with your mind, and it definitely puts a little bit more strain when you study history, because unfortunately history is just a recollection of what actually happened, well, most of the time. And there's always going to be atrocities, and there's always going to be like those like slights, and like as someone who gets into what they're doing, like for me, like I get actually mad sometimes when I'm like studying and something happens, and I'm like, well, that's really not fair. And so like it's a mental load to take on that, and then being able to like reciprocate that in like a acceptable way. But also like you said, like there's just a lot of different pressures in our lives, right? Like I'm also doing event chef. I work with a bunch of different groups. I anchor myself by honestly just being thankful for even having these opportunities. You know, I've been trying to claw and out of this. I've been trying to claw in like into a career for like almost like God, almost 15 years now. I've always been the guy that's harped about like Filipino food, and like why can't we just do that? And so like now that it's all coming to fruition, like I find it hard, and like I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth. And so like to me, it's exhausting to do doing all this, but I'm thankful because this is what I wanted to do, and this is what I've been kind of working towards. And you know, I've been lucky enough to get the attention of the Filipino Arts Council, and then some with Filistix and Yellow. Like, I'm just thankful. I mean, as well as like my family too, right? Like, I got a new nephew, so like, it's been a great bundle of like poking at him when I'm like feeling tired, and it's fine.
Yeah.
I think you just find like the access where you can, right? Like, I game as we can see. I try to. I don't have time anymore, but I'll try to game if I have a minute, just kind of like not think about what I'm doing for Filipino food for a while. But no, I think honestly the majority of it is I'm just very thankful for where I am right now, and like I'm realizing that if I can just work through a little bit of what I'm exhausted about right now, and if I can just kind of solidify a couple more things, and then it'll mean a lot for the community. And at least I think to me anyways, it'll be a good impact for the community. And so to me, it's like, if I can do that, then it's kind of worth it.
Exactly. So now we get to the part where I ask you, how can we follow you in your journey? And like, do you have like social media, or I guess anywhere that we could go to experience your cuisine?
Yeah. So mostly on Instagram, because as much as I like to be on social media, I'm still an old man. So I have an Instagram and a Facebook. Instagram is Chef E Briones. If you're wondering how to spell my last name, it should be on the Zoom call.
Yeah.
I'm mostly there. That's mostly where I post my fine dining stuff, but also sometimes Carnivore, which is my concept. That's a sandwich shop.
So
Sorry?
I have a question about Carbivore. Is that something that's always on, or is it just you post when you're open, or?
So Carbivore used to be in the Ghost Kitchen, so that's why it has a lot of posts. But now that's a pop-up until I find a space. And so that, if you're on Facebook, I'm also on Facebook as Chef E Briones. I'm very boring. I don't like to make cool names. Other than that, if you're wanting to kind of see what I'm doing for food, this April, I'll be doing another historical dinner. This one is my rendition of Magellan's menu. And I say rendition because what I have for Magellan's menu as a menu by itself is just a list of ingredients. So we're just going to have fun and talk about the history of how people found my homeland. Other than May, if you're not able to go in April, May 20th is actually the targeted date of opening for the Epic Center. So if people are interested, we might be doing a dinner there. And then June 14th to the 16th, I'm doing a dinner called Harana, which is celebrating our dances and our music. May as well, I'm trying to do a dinner with Food's Repair Shop with Winnie.
Ooh, no way.
Hopefully we can do it for like a cause. Like, I'm hoping I can do give money to choose. But yeah, those are what I have so far, because I don't want to think too far ahead, because I don't know if I'm going to be in the province come July. So
what do you mean?
With the June dinner, I'm inviting two chefs, one from Winnipeg and one from Vancouver.
Yeah.
So the trade-off is I have to go to their provinces as well.
So can you tell us who the chef is, or you can't yet?
I'm working with Alan Pineda. He owns the new tiki bar that opened in Winnipeg.
Oh, okay.
Bahay Kubo, and then he has the Baon Manila Nights dinner series. The other one is Mark Singson. He's from Vancouver. He's been on Top Chef, and yeah, he's doing the same thing I'm doing. And then August, I'm actually going to Winnipeg to do the festival with Alan for Cultivation Festival. Yeah, so it's just going to be very Filipino this year.
Wow, that's amazing. So yeah, just to recap, I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge and your journey and everything with us. It's so valuable. And I think also very important to get it out there to the youth, like who have dreams of being a chef. I think I would have benefited from this when I was younger, that's for sure. Seeing something like this probably would have motivated me further. And then we have the Magellan dinner, and that's going to be at Filistix. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes. And then May 20th, the opening, projected opening of Epic Center, which if people are new, that's the Philippine International Center.
Yeah,
Edmonton,
Philippine International Center, yeah.
Yes, so Epic. And then possibly in May, Food's Repair Shop, but you don't have the date there yet?
No, not yet, just because like May is starting to get clogged, and so I'm just like,
Yeah, crazy. I was just there, Food's Repair Shop. It was good.
Honestly, like, I can't speak highly of food enough. The food's good. Winnie is an amazing human being. The staff is amazing because they're half Filipino. But
and the DJ, The DJs, the
Yeah,
music, I love it.
the bartender is also Filipino. It's just it's a
Yes.
great place. Like it's a great place, and so like yeah,
Yeah, awesome. And then June 14 to 16 is Harana
yeah,
with your guest chefs from Vancouver and Winnipeg.
yeah.
And where is that going to be?
That
What's
one
your...
is going to be at the Epic Center.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. That's the one. Right. Yeah. Okay. So that's great. I think we've covered all of it. And you'll be in Winnipeg in August.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Great.
I'm
Yeah.
exhausted just hearing all that. So what am I doing?
Yeah. You need to get your calendar in order.
Oh,
You're like, I feel like now you're like, I need to sleep. Take a
I
nap.
try to get a calendar in order, but then like 5 different things happen, and I'm like, it's out of order again. Cool.
Yeah, holy. Yeah, that's a lot, but I'm super excited. You'll see me at some of them, some of your events. I for sure am putting time aside for that. So again, thank you so much. We appreciate you being here. And just to recap, I really love that you're all about collaboration, inspiring the youth, and as well as the LGBTQ plus community. I'm very excited for what you're going to do in the future, and we're here for it.
Thank you. Yeah, no, honestly, this is great. Like, it's great to finally find similar voices that would rather work together than like kneecap each other. So, yeah, thanks for having me here. It's been great talking to you guys, and yeah, hopefully talk to you guys and see you guys again soon.
So everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if so, please drop us a like or subscribe and follow us on our socials and share the episode if you can. We're also building up future topics in a tabo. So if you suggest a topic, we'll put it in our tabo. And if it's John, your pick or your topic will become a future episode. So yeah, DM us if you have any future topics. So thanks for tuning in. And I hope we have enough insight so that the next time you can talk about it.